No sense at all, but we take them on anyway. People ask me about my life all the time, and of course I have the critical acclaim, and now I'm definitely in the leadership position. And I always say that my life is always explained by two trains leaving the station at the same time, the professional and the personal. I started life having one heck of an inheritance. My mother got married and had her first child at 15. She had an 8th grade education. She was one of 18 children born on Singleton Plantation in South Carolina, which is where I was born in 1965. And a father who had a 2nd grade education and didn't know how to read. He said he learned by looking at the billboards on the side of the road, but he never really mastered reading and writing. I moved to Central Falls, Rhode Island when I was 2 months old. Central Falls, Rhode Island was a predominantly white community in 1965. And we grew up in abject poverty. I always say we were po, not poor, po. We lived in condemned buildings. My personal favorite being 128 Washington Street. Every time my sister Dolores and I talk, we'll say, I had a nightmare about 128. And it was a building that was infested with rats. And infested. No plumbing, no phone. We were all bedwetters. We got our furniture from the side of the road, or we bought it from the Salvation Army. I wore the shame and the guilt of poverty the same way I wore my name. I felt like it was a reflection of who I was. I didn't see a way out because no one showed me a way out. I think the first seed I got was when I was introduced to my older sister for the first time when she was 9 and I was 5. My grandmother was taking care of her and my older brother because we were too poor to take care of them. And I remember her looking around at our apartment in this condemned building with the plaster coming off the walls and the rats and the smell. And I remember her saying, the only way you are going to get out of this is education. So you have to know what you want to be. I'm 5 years old, so I'm thinking, all right. So she says, so what do you want to be? And I said, well, I don't know. And so she said, you have to decide if you don't want this life. So then my life transpired. 2 trains leaving the station. Professional train being, I gotta be somebody. I wanna be somebody. I wanna dream big. I want my name up in lights. I don't know how, but I'm gonna do it. And the personal train, being one of shame, being one of watching a mother on a day-to-day basis being beaten within an inch of her life by a father. And I mean beaten. Legs being beaten, stabbed, blood, beaten. Watching that dysfunction, saying, I don't want to be my mother's daughter. So the trains are leaving the station. And I'm thinking I'm going to do everything I can to be better than, to not be her, to dream big. And so I squelched shame, I squelched insecurity, I squelched fear by overachieving. And let me tell you something. I got a scholarship from the Daughters of American Revolution when I was 14 years old. And knowing their history, you know that's overachieving. But I remember I got the bug for acting very early on by saying, I don't want to just be a famous actress. No, I want to be a critically acclaimed actress. So when we wrote skits, we just didn't write skits, me and my sisters. We had to have a rehearsal. We had rewrites. One was a producer. We even had a wardrobe budget. That was $2. We got our costumes at the Salvation Army. But it definitely was a life of someone who was on a fast track and dancing to not listen to what was growing inside here, which was not feeling good enough, but knowing that I had to be better than. And that's a hell of a dichotomy. I mean, I would just gravitate towards competition. Rhode Island State Drama Festivals. We used to have those in high school. I had to win awards. My whole thing is after I performed, I needed people to throw roses at me. If they didn't throw a rose at me, then I failed. Getting a scholarship at Juilliard, going to Rhode Island College and getting a bachelor's degree in theater, always wanting to be number one. I hit a wall at 28. But the wall was only hit after a lot of things that transpired before 28. I always say that my fondest memory now is of running into the bathroom after my dad was beating my mom. And he was really beating her in the middle of the night. He was trying to break her legs. And I remember screaming at the top of my lungs. I screamed, screaming, terrified. And finally, I ran into the bathroom because I couldn't take looking at it anymore. Ran into the bathroom. And this is my big aha moment in life that I only realized later on. I ran into the bathroom and I closed the door. And I got down on my knees and I prayed to God. And my prayer, and it was a desperate prayer, was, God, I'm going to count to 10. And when I count to 10, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want this life. And if you love me in any way, when I open my eyes, I will have disappeared. And I counted to 10. And I opened my eyes. And I was still there. And I said, I knew you didn't exist. 2 trains leaving the station. So you fast track to 28, realizing that now I was at Juilliard. I'm graduating from Juilliard. I'm now starting my professional life. I now am at the jump-off point of making all my dreams happen, and I feel like crap. I get a Tony nomination, Tony Award nomination, and I'm depressed. And I said, something is wrong. And the wrong thing was that professionally, I was not my mother's daughter. Educationally, I was not my mother's daughter. But personally, I was very much my mother's daughter. And so I decided, like any self-respecting actor would who has Screen Actors Guild insurance, that I was going to invest in personal therapy, only to make myself feel good. You see, here's the thing about pursuing one's dreams and stepping into leadership, which I knew I was on the fast track to. Listen, I now have, 2 Tony Awards, 2 Academy Award nominations. My life has been a trajectory of progression, of literally being so successful that literally it was a life that God, who I denounced, was telling me, I got bigger dreams for you, sister. And so you can't step into who you are until you feel good about who you are. That you set out saving a lot of things in life, but the first thing you have to save is yourself. And so I'm in therapy. And my aha moment is going back to the girl of 9 saying, God, I'm going to count to 10. And when I open my eyes, you will have made me disappear. You will take my life. Well, he did take my life. He took my life because I am definitely a walking, breathing example of all of these girls at the foundation of education for young women. There was nothing in my life that could predict my future. I had to make my way. And I made it because I had a fierce desire, not necessarily the know-how. But when I put the desire out in the world, there was enough people who saw it and who believed in me, who taught me how to master a skill, taught me that failure did not define who I was, and simply liked me. And so it's those teachers that constantly threw me a rope, a great therapist, seriously, just being honest, who threw me a rope and guided me when I could not guide myself. Because really, those of us who imagine what life would be without time, without death, without sorrow, are unfit for illumination. That failure exists on the same plane as dreams and accomplishments. And you gotta figure out how to work both of them. And so here I am, relying on the kindness of strangers throughout my life. And now all of a sudden, 2 years ago, I'm nominated for an Oscar in the lead actress category, which, by the way, if you ever saw me on television at any award show, just know that I was completely terrified. That afterwards it became very, very apparent that when God took my life at the age of 9, he had a purpose for it. And purpose always means living a life bigger than yourself. They say you have to be the heroine of your own life. And so it became very apparent after I got the Oscar nomination for lead actress that there was a deficit for actresses of color, especially in the business. That you can only be as good as your opportunities. And so here I am, a dark-skinned girl with the fro who lost the Miss Central Falls Recreation Contest when I was 6 years old, who never felt pretty, who was constantly called black, black, ugly, ugly, nigger, nigger, at black, black, black. Finding myself having to walk into the room of a male-dominated culture and be the voice of actresses of color. not knowing what that voice was, but knowing that I had to be the voice. And it's a funny thing about purpose, that when you realize you have one, whether you step into it slowly or boldly, at least you're stepping into it. And I remember someone saying once that sometimes the best you can hope for in any given day is not just to hit the 10, just maybe to hit the 3. And then maybe the next day you can hit the 4. And being okay with it. And I realized that that is how the production company, which I started with my gorgeous, talented, beautiful husband, that literally, that's what it's been. And slowly by hitting the 3 and then hitting the 5 and then hitting the maybe 4, then going up to the 6, I can literally stand before you today and say that I am literally a leader. And I understand that potential has a shelf life, and I don't mean to be on the shelf. You know, truly the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. I wish that for my mom. I wish that for my dad. My dad passed away from pancreatic cancer at the age of 70. And my sister Dolores kept saying, I can't believe Dad is dying. And he never lived out his potential. Another aha moment. I've forgiven my dad by the time he passed, because forgiveness is literally giving up all hope of a different past. I embraced my life at that point. But I absolutely believe that I was his dream. I believe I'm my mother's dream. I believe that all of the 550 young women who come from generations of people who literally were domestics and people who did not live out their full potential, that you are their dream. You are their hope. You are their investment. And you know, like any investment, it needs money. And I think money is a small price to pay to make a difference in the life of a child. And I'm so happy that people really invested in me, because without the investment, I don't know who I would have been. I think I was lowballing it when I just gave God 10 seconds. You know, they always say that the path of a hero, that you start out with the call to adventure. You know? Call to adventure. You're just a person. But something comes along in your life where God says, I got something big for you. And then the next step is you get to the path of the road where you just kind of want to fall back into everything people have told you you should be. And you don't want to move forward to what God wants you to be. So you're stuck. And the key to releasing it is releasing fear. If I were to give any of the young women in this audience any advice, is you gotta release the fear. It is okay to be scared as hell. It is okay to fall and bump and just fall again. But just keep it moving. You know, I have a sister now who did not make it out. And I wish that she would have found an organization like this when she was younger. Only because I feel that true love exists when you step out of yourself to help someone else. I have been called to encourage people to invest in these young women. Invest in your time, invest in their lives in any way. Because truly, that is a life, is making a difference in the life of a child. You know, they say the two most important days in a person's life is the day you were born and the day you discover why you were born. And I have a daughter now, and now I know. I want to leave something on this earth bigger than me, way bigger than me. And so I thank you so much for having me here. It has been the joy of my life to have all of these speaking gigs I've had around the country. Because I'm telling you, really red carpets and makeup and all of that, that has a shelf life. But I have to tell you, I never get tired of inspiring. That has absolutely been the joy of my life. And I thank you so much for giving me so much joy today. Thank you.